Okay, in this problem, we're giving data that shows the number of customers who come in the store from 7 to 7:30 a.m. So normally this may be mixed all up like in your homework. It probably didn't give it to you in order, but I went ahead and put it in order just so that we could see it a little bit better. So what we want to do is construct a relative frequency distribution, and since we only have 0 through 4, we know that we could just list these out because those are good classes to have. We don't have a wide range here. So first of all, let's count how many zeros we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So our frequency is 6 for 0. We have 4 ones. We have 2, 4, 6 twos. We have 2 threes, and we have 2, 4, 6, 7 fours. So there would be our frequency distribution table. Now, we're wanting to find the cumulative relative frequency. Well, first let's go ahead and find the relative frequency, and then we can find the cumulative relative frequency a little bit easier. So for your relative frequency, what you're going to do is, I'm going to move this down, you're going to take your frequency and divide it by the total amount of data points you have. So one easy way to find out how many we have in our sample or data is to add up our frequency, or you could go over here and count each one of these data points, but we're just going to add these up. So our relative frequency would be 6 divided by 25, and since I have the calculator pulled up here, I'll just do that. And so we get 0.24 for our relative. So for our cumulative relative frequency, I'm going to go ahead and put 0.24 because that is going to stay the same, the first set. Now for the second relative frequency, we have 4 in our frequency divided by 25. So 4 divided by 25. Let's go ahead and write these down. 6 divided by 25. 2 divided by 25. And 7 divided by 25. So to save time, if you'll use your calculator and work this as I'm working it, 4 divided by 25 would be 0.16. And 6 divided by 25 would be 0.24, which we already had a class like that. 2 out of 25 is 0.08, and 7 out of 25, or divided by 25, is 0.28. Now, these values are basically like a probability, and they should add up to 1, your relative frequencies. If for some reason you had to round on your homework, it may not have been, if you checked it right at 1, it may have been 0.999, but it should not be over 1, and it should be very close to 1. Now let's get to what we were trying to find, the cumulative relative frequency. So to get your cumulative relative frequency of your second row, you're going to add the first 2 rows up. So that would be 0.40. To get your third row, you're going to add your first 3 rows up, which we kind of already added the first 2. So add these 3 together and you would get 0.64. Now add these 4 together and you would get 0.72. And then add all 5 and you would get 1. So when you get to the end, it should be very close to 1.999 or something close to that. Now, cumulative means it accumulates. So this frequency is getting larger and larger and working its way to 1. So if I ask you to find the cumulative relative frequency or to make your table would simply be this: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I just wanted the cumulative, you would just put the cumulative. You wouldn't have to put the relative frequency. But I like to put the relative frequency because it helps me understand how to get the cumulative relative frequency. So here's your cumulative relative frequency distribution table. And then, so there's part A, and then for part B, find the probability that 3 or fewer will come in the morning between 7 a.m. So 3 or fewer would be from here and back. So you could use, if you wanted 3 or fewer, you could go to 3 and get the cumulative relative frequency, because that represents 3 or fewer. Or you could take the relative frequency and add all the ones that are 3 or fewer. But either way, you would get 0.72. Let me know if you have any questions about frequency distribution tables. Now, one more time, let me review so everybody understands, and I'll just highlight. So this first part here is what I call a frequency distribution table. When you do the 0 and the 0.24, these numbers, this would be, if you did this one and this one, this would be what we call the relative frequency distribution table. And then if you did what we did over here in part A, this is the cumulative relative frequency table.